Oh, beloved, I have to tell you, I have really been troubled of mind of late, more than I have been for a while. And that's why it's probably really a good idea that this is the 7th week after Easter, because this is the day that we celebrate Pentecost. And Pentecost, if you've been to church, I know you've heard this, because Pentecost is the day that the Holy Spirit came down into the people of God, into the disciples. All people are people of God, but the disciples physically came to them. That's where the part of Christianity that calls itself Pentecostal gets its name, from Pentecost. So even if you're not a Christian, you may have heard of it. But it is a pretty important day because it is the moment when the power of God enters into a human being. It happened 2,000 years ago, and it can happen today. And brothers and sisters, beloved, I need the Holy Spirit. So it's good that we celebrate it, but it happened in a context, right? And that context was the beginning of Christianity. And so we have the Last Supper. The timeline is this. We have the Last Supper, the final supper with Jesus as a fully human and fully divine being. He has a meal with his friends. And then he is arrested, he's tried, he's convicted, he's tortured, he's killed, he is buried. He comes back from the dead, and he spends 40 days, there's a number, 40 days, with his friends. And on the last day that he spends on earth, he has another supper with his friends. And there are about 120 of them at this point. Men and women, some of them are named, many of them are not. Mary Magdalene, I'm sure, was there. Mary, the mother of God, was there, named. But there were 120 people. And Jesus says to them, look, I'm going to give you the gift of the Holy Spirit, and you're going to wait for it. I want you to go to Jerusalem and wait. And I'm going to give you the gift of the Holy Spirit. And the disciples immediately go, oh, are you going to build the kingdom of Israel now? Are we going to finally win the battle? And Jesus says, stop. Don't worry about the time. Don't worry about the place. Just go and wait. And so they do. And when the waiting is over, there is this wind that happens. And something like fire comes down. It's physical. You can see it. People recall, they can't describe it because it is indescribable. That's part of the problem with the Holy Spirit. You can't really describe it to another person because you have to experience it. You can only approach it in metaphor, right? That's the only way you can describe it. So you can never really tell you exactly what it is, but you know it when you feel it. When it is present in you, you know it. And it is present in them at that time, right? And from that moment on, things change. The disciples before this point are falling all over themselves. They are calling Jesus to burn down houses, and they're wondering, can we sit next to you? And they are unable to do the things that Jesus says you will be able to do. They try, and they go a ways, but there is a point in which they can't go any further. But from this point on, things change. And they are able to do what they were previously not able to do before. And Jesus says before that day, he says, look, this is going to happen, and you are going to go out and speak to the world. And whenever God chooses that time to be, not your time, God's time, then it will go to the ends of the earth. Your job is to go and wait and receive. And so that's what they do. And as soon as they do that, they start speaking in tongues. Now, you could call that, some people say that is speaking in tongues, a language which that is not spoken on earth. That is angelic language. That is how some people take that to mean. It can mean that. It can also mean that they are able, for some reason, for that time, to speak in German or Greek or Japanese or all the languages of earth. Because when they go out, they're going out into a festival. And that festival is filled with people from around the world that hear the message. And it takes quite a long time, but the message spreads. And it goes out and out and out and out and out until the Roman world that was the oppressor is now turned. And sadly, once Christianity begins to be in power, then its real power changes. When it gets to being led by human power, then things go awry. It has to start with a beginning, and that beginning has to be a surrender, but to something. And that something is the Holy Spirit. And that something is a real something that can be in you. I know that, and I say that because I've experienced it. Far less than other people, far less than I would like to. Because just so far as I'm willing to open to it, so much can come in. And what that allows me to do in ways that I could not do before is do what God commands me to do, which is love my enemies. To see beyond their anger and their fear, which is what is driving the actions that I dislike, and find the pain and address that, which I could not do otherwise. And that is open to you. It is open to me. It happened 2,000 years ago. It happens today. Open yourself, surrender, and be well. God bless.